inviting the monks to come and have food and donations makes and turns your place into a place that is inviting, that feels good to be in, feels like a true home. It's good to make a habit out of wholesome rituals like paying respects to the monks, and every time you come home to prostrate to the Buddha statues, to pay respects to the teacher. It is good to have people of high moral standards that oversee the house. Like if you have elders that are established in goodness and morality, then the people that come to live here and the cousins and relatives that come to visit get a good influence of what it's like to have a good, happy home. And it's similar to practicing the Dhamma, because with the Dhamma you need a home, you need a happy, comfortable, wholesome home for your mind, like a mantra or your breath. But the home isn't just like the home in our meditation or Dhamma practice. Is a place that isn't a jail or a prison for the mind. And just like it isn't a prison for us, it's a place to feel comfortable and rest with and feel good to be in. But then we have to go out from there into the world and have our responsibilities. It's like when we come back to our home, we'd like to stay with our home. It's a place that we'd like to stay, but we have business to attend to in the world, and so we have to leave our home. But we're always happy to come back. That's the type of home we need to have for both our home in the world and in our Dhamma practice. So if we have Buddha as a mantra, then that is our home. So we're happy to be with Buddha. And when we're not with Buddha, usually our mind will wander off. And we have to recognize our mind wandering off is outgoing. It's like outgoing to do business when we're at our house and we have to go off and do something. But it might be something that isn't important to go out and do. It's kind of the kind of thing that we go out to do for fun, but it isn't really things that are necessary to go out to do. So that's analogous to the mind that wanders off into all kinds of thoughts and nonsensical stuff, not our job or the things that we're responsible for thinking about, but aimless type thinking. Right? We can just notice that is a mind that is a restless mind. And so when we practice, there are many different doors to our home that we can leave through, but the one that we leave through the most is the mind that wanders off. Right? The other doors are the eyes, the ears, the nose, the body, and such. And going out, those ones are harder to see when the mind goes out. The eyes, or goes out the ears, or the nose, or the tongue, or the body. It's easier to see the mind that it's easier to see that we got lost in thought, or that the mind went out to think, and it happens the most. So really that's the only door that is vital to see that you've gone out. So another reason it's not quite as vital to see the mind go through the other physical senses is because after the mind goes out the physical senses, then there's some internal fabrication that goes on after that, and then we have a response to that internal fabrication, not really to what we see. So for example, our eyes see that Noi, the house whose house we're in now, and her mother or grandmother sees through the eyes that, oh, why isn't she home yet? Right? And then so she fabricates in her mind that when she looks out the eyes, just doesn't see her there. Then fabricates, oh, why isn't she home yet? And then feels displeased. Right? So there's lots of different exits out of the house, out of the home, right? Windows and back door and such, but the big exit is the front doors. And that's like analogous to our thoughts. Because it doesn't matter if we go out the others, or there's the other ways out, those are the little small ways out, but it's always going to go out to think, even if it goes out to see or hear or smell, it's going to fabricate some idea about it and then react to the idea. So ultimately, fabricating the thoughts and ideas is always going to happen, even with the other senses. So that's the big one that we have to be able to see, to notice.
นั่งแท็กซี่อย่างเร็วสุดก็ยังนานใช่ไหมแท็กซี่บอกไม่ไปจะไปเติมแก๊สอะไรเงี้ยปฏิเสธไม่รับผู้โดยสารหมุนหยิบรถแท็กซี่
It's perfectly normal and natural for the mind to get lost in thought because that's what it's used to doing. It hasn't been trained at all. And even great monks, their mind wanders off at times. And when the mind goes out and sees something that when we see something and we feel that we've assigned a lot of value to it, we see something and assign a lot of value to it, it's natural that the mind is going to mull it over again and again. So even when we're in our meditation, it'll come up and we'll think about it again. So suppose that we're sitting and doing some formal meditation and we start wandering off thinking about all these good things or all these bad things. It doesn't really matter. We just notice that we've gone out, like we've left our home. So our home might be Buddha, or it might be breathing in Bud and breathing out Do. And then our mind wanders off. The best thing we can do is to know that the mind has gone off. And we're not looking to pull back or force the mind to be still. And we're not looking for the mind to wander off either. But when it wanders off, we know so. The knowing is at the Buddha or at the breath when we're at home. And then we become aware when the mind has wandered off. But if we then think, oh, look what I just wandered off to. I wandered off to thinking about my old home. Right? That's doubling up on the mind being restless. And then once we become aware, then we start over again at the home base. Yesterday, the foreigners were saying that starting over again at the home base sounds like we failed the game. Like in a game when you have to start over, it feels like you failed and then you got to start over. It feels like you did something wrong. But the truth is, when you practice, it's not like a game in the sense that it has many different levels and you fail and you go back to the first level again. There's only one level. The only level is getting lost in thought and knowing so. Mind wandering off, knowing so again and again. That's it. So when we know that the mind has gone off, then we keep playing. Right? But the idea is the style of keeping playing means you start back at the same level, that the one and only level. So we continue the game of knowing when the mind moves off again. But in order to see that the mind wanders off, we have to go back to the home base again. So the game just continues in the same way. Increasing our level or getting more points in the game is just a matter of knowing in a timely fashion when our mind has wandered off. Sometimes also the level
องค์ราคาที่ไรนะเรามักจะชอบ
of the level sort of improves. The easy when the easy level is to be able to notice anger, because anger is a stronger emotion. It's easier to notice. And then we sort of move up a level when we're also able to notice greed or craving, because greed or craving is a little bit more subtle than the anger to notice.
คิดดีก็เผลอคิดไม่ดีก็เผลอ
Now, the mind lost in thought, it doesn't matter if the mind is thinking something good or thinking something bad. It's all just lost in thought.
คำตอบปัญหาอันนั้นมันผุดขึ้นมาอย่างเงี้ยไม่เป็นไรแต่ตอนคำตอบที่ผุดขึ้นมาเนี่ยนะมันรักเดียวมันเป็นความเข้าใจมันเป็นปัญญาระดับอะไรตอนนั้นให้มัน
Sometimes we're practicing meditation and then we get an answer or a solution to something that we had been thinking about earlier and couldn't think of a solution. So that's a very worldly type of wisdom, not vipassana wisdom, where samatha or a calmness meditation can help us see something clearly. And that's not vipassana. But then we might, once we get an answer to something, that's just 1 second and that's fine, we get a clear answer. But then we might start thinking it over, mulling it over, and thinking, oh, I'll do this and I'll do that. And now the mind has just gotten busy and restless. We've left our meditation. So it's fine if we get a clear answer that comes up in our meditation, but that just takes one moment. And we don't need to follow that any further. There was a meditator many, many years ago that was looking to become the Buddha in a future lifetime. And so he wanted to know, what do I have to develop in order to become the Buddha? And he was a good meditator, so he went into a deep absorption meditation and meditated on it. The mind was still until an answer appeared that I have to practice the generosity, the perfection of generosity. And so there was just that one fabrication or formulation that came up, right? Just a moment. There wasn't anything necessary to think, oh, so what should I do then? How should I go about it? Just the understanding and then the continuation of the practice. Using calmness or samatha meditation, you can ask a question and then just be still. And then you might get a very quality answer that arises. But you don't have to go and continue thinking about it. The answer is clear. But if we're going to practice calmness meditation, make sure that we really enjoy our meditation object, maybe like Buddha, or breathing in, breathing out Do. We don't have to breathe in any particular way. We don't have to be forceful to keep the mind attentive to the object, because we'll never be peaceful when we're starting in a forced and stressed way. If the mind isn't ready yet, then it won't be concentrated. Just breathe normally, and naturally there might be a harsher breath, but that'll just happen by itself. Sometimes when the mind is more defiled, the breath is harsher. That's natural. The breath can get subtler when we're more peaceful, but you just let all that happen. You don't try to do any of it. And just observe the breath. Enjoy being with it, and totally allow the mind to wander off whenever it does, but then know that the mind has gone out to work. And we're able to know that it's gone out to work. We depend on the home to see that it's left the home. So we use the home in order to see that the mind has wandered off, and we fully let it wander off and then know that it has. And then start over in the sense of continue the game, not in the sense of pulling back. We understand incorrectly if we pull the mind back. The mind is something that arises and falls.
ไม่ใช่ว่าอยู่แบบรวมเดียวนิ่งๆนะเกิดการ
It isn't something that needs pulling to the next moment.
เดียวได้นานๆที่จะทำสมถะกรรมฐาน
If the mind stays with an object for a long time, that's called samatha.
คิดเรื่องหน่อยคิดเรื่องหน่อยนะหน่อยไม่ได้อยู่ตรงนี้แล้วหน่อยทำงานไม่ได้อยู่ในบ้านเลยที่ทำไปหน่อยอยู่ข้างนอกแล้ว
So, for example,
จิตขณะที่คิดถึงหน่อยเนี่ยเป็นคนละขณะ
one moment we might be thinking of our friend Noi,
ลมหายใจได้ดับไปแล้วไปคิดถึงหน่อยแล้ว
but Noi isn't in the home, but we're sitting in the home and we think of Noi.
ขณะที่รู้ว่าเผลอไม่ได้คิดถึงหน่อย
Then
แล้ว
we realize
คือมี
that
จิต
our mind has wandered
เห็น
off.
ที่นี้ว่ามันเผลอไปคิดถึงหน่อย
That next mind
จิตดวงที่เห็นว่าจิตเมื่อกี้
realizes that the mind wandered off. The mind before it was a mind that was busy thinking of Noi.
คิดถึงหน่อยอยู่เนี่ยเป็นจิตที่เผลอ
So the mind that was thinking of Noi is the mind that is wandered off, or the mind that is lost. And then once that is known or seen, the mind is not wandered off anymore.
เพราะฉะนั้นไม่มีความจำเป็นจะต้องไป
The mind that was wandering has disappeared, and the next mind that arose is a mind that is knowing.
ดับไปแล้วมีจิตที่รู้
You don't have to pull that mind that wandered off
นั้นกิจกรรมที่จะไปทำคือไป
and thought about Noi back to an object, because that mind has already disappeared, and there's a new mind that's knowing now.
เป็นการกระทำกับจิตที่เป็นอดีต
So you're trying to do something with a mind that already has disappeared in the
ที่
past.
เกิดขึ้นมาให้กลับบ้านก็คือเริ่มต้นที่บ้าน
So what do? We start. So coming home in the Buddhist practice, or in the Dhamma practice, is about starting over at the home, right? We're not taking the old mind that was somewhere else and bringing it to the home. We're starting with a new mind.
ทำใหม่ก็คือเริ่มต้นใหม่เริ่มต้นใหม่นี่ไม่ใช่ว่าแพ้แล้วมาเริ่มต้น
At the home. Even the mind that was knowing a moment ago, you don't have to pull to the object, because that mind that was knowing only knew for a second and disappeared. And the new mind
คะแนนใหม่ที่ได้ก็คือว่า
attends to the home.
เผลอไปแล้วรู้ไอ้ตอนเผลอไม่ต้องไปทำมันทำ
So there isn't anything that you need to do to make the mind wander off.
จะรู้ว่า
But when we're practicing,
ไม่ต้องไปแก้ไข
there has to be a little bit of attention to know that our mind wandered off. But we don't have to interfere with it, because once we know, the mind that was lost disappeared.
พอรู้ปุ๊บมักจะแทรกแซงรีบไปดึงติด
But usually we interfere and we try to take that mind that knows and then try to pull it to something. But that's wrong. That's incorrect practice, because that's already disappeared, that mind.
ที่ว่าภาวนายากเพราะว่า
So some people think it's difficult to practice because they don't understand that the mind arises and falls each moment.
ที่ไปรู้น่ะ
It doesn't matter what it is that we're thinking
แต่ในตัว
about.
นั้นคือเผลอเรื่องไหม
Whether if we're a monk, we might be thinking of very different things than a layperson is thinking about when their mind wanders
เรื่อง
on.
อะไรเรียกว่าเผลอหมดเลย
But it really doesn't matter what we're thinking about at all. It's all the same phenomenon of the mind leaving the meditation object and getting lost in the world of thought.
ไปถึงบ้านเก่าก่อนก่อนจะฝันเห็นตัวเองเป็น
If we lived in the same place for a long time, then there were a lot of minds that arose and fall in that place. And so our mind will obviously go to think about and formulate and fabricate stories regarding that place.
เป็นเด็กมากๆเลยวิ่งเล่นอยู่